Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the National Police Association podcast. I have a guest today that, it sounds so cliche, but he needs no introduction. We reached out to Gregory Bovino very recently of the United States Border Patrol. This is a guy who has been everywhere when it comes to illegal immigration and public safety inside of the United States. And we really wanted to get him on the show. First of all, to congratulate him on his retirement and see what he's up to, but also ask him to help us understand what is happening with immigration and deportations here in the United States. Sir, welcome to the show.
Well, Betsy, thanks for having me, and it's good to be here.
So I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody who is in law enforcement and comes on this show. Why'd you become a cop?
Well, I had some excellent experiences as a youth with cops. It had to do with snowballs. There in Western North Carolina, I thought it would be a good idea one time to throw snowballs at cars, except I hit Sergeant Taylor's patrol car with a snowball. And old Sergeant Taylor was a little faster than I was. That was probably about 1978, 79, something like that. And we had a long talk. And I'll tell you what, I was very impressed, even at a young age, with law enforcement and the way they did things and the way they actually cared about society. And then fast forward to the U.S. Border Patrol. I liked that let's care about society kind of thing. Do a little bit for the public, for the public morality, the public virtue, that type of thing. But let's do it maybe with the U.S. Border Patrol. A little hint of adventure there with U.S. Border Patrol as well, sort of the Wild West many years ago. And I put the application in and joined. But that started way back in the 70s with the snowball.
That is a fantastic story. So you joined the Border Patrol in 1996, and then you worked your way up. And in 2020, you ended up in El Centro, California, which is a sector that I'm really familiar with. And talk to me about the leadership principles that drove you when it came to working right on the border, the southern border of the United States and Mexico.
Sure. Well, as far as leadership in the U.S. Border Patrol, one of the things I think that influenced me there on the border is the fact that for many years, as you know, Sarge, excuse me, the U.S. Border Patrol was, you could say, the redheaded stepchildren there of the federal government, often underfunded, sort of America's secret there in the Southwest there that no one really paid attention to. So therefore, I thought it was much more important to get through those lean times, those tough times via leadership, because leadership it can really have an effect, good or bad, on a mission, and most especially on our most precious of resources. And those are the Border Patrol agents. So as I joined the Border Patrol in 96 in El Centro sector, and then climbed the ranks, I became a first line supervisor in approximately 2002. And I thought, let's provide leadership to these men and women that are out there giving it their all with nothing. That was before the days of remote video surveillance cameras, drones, the really good ground detection sensors that we have now. They did it on their own. So let's support those folks and let's lead those folks and make them successful in a very difficult mission. So, I think that lack of resources back then was something that really spoke to the need for good, strong leadership that would stand up for agents that might not otherwise have a voice or have good leadership.
I'm glad you said that, because you have said that it's been your great honor to serve alongside those agents who are doing an incredibly difficult job with that lack of resources. If you listen to the media now, you think that Border Patrol are running around in helicopters and everybody's got a personal drone and this and that. And yet nothing could be further from the truth, right?
Exactly, and that speaks to those vacillations of politics. There's some political regimes that come in that are actually pretty good to the Border Patrol. Donald Trump, for instance, hey, he wants to fund us. He wants to give us the equipment, the manpower, technology, all this good stuff. But look what happened, Trump 45, and then all of a sudden Biden came in and took it all away. Not only did he take it away, he took more away than what we had, and it made it actually worse. So those vacillations of politics definitely affect the Border Patrol, perhaps more than any other federal law enforcement agency, and that's bad, Sarge, in many ways. But in some ways, that makes our workforce more resilient, doing more with less in difficult times like that. So it's not all bad. If we don't have all the best equipment or the best funding, we make do, sort of the Marine Corps of federal law enforcement, I guess you could say. And it does make our men and women more resilient. And when I say I like to, my greatest pleasure is serving alongside those Border Patrol agents, that's one reason why is that resilience, that spirit there on the border. Wow, it motivates me as a leader. Actually, I actually get motivated by them. And hey, if we don't have brand new Tahoes to drive, well, you know what? We're still going to get the job done, and it's that Border Patrol spirit that does it. It's again our most precious resource. That's the agents.
So here you are, you're a cop, you're a boss, you're doing your job, and then all of a sudden you are thrust into really the international media, and you're running these operations in Minneapolis, in Texas, in LA. And so you're not just dealing with that, but you're also the subject of all kinds of vitriol, and there's go everybody go online and look at all the Gregory Bovino memes that are out there, good and bad. You become this incredible larger than life figure. What was that like?
Well, honestly, I was so busy, Sarge, that a lot of times I didn't even have time to really take a look at that nor delve too deep into that. A lot of times I don't take myself very seriously anyway. So yeah, I knew there was obviously a lot of media, as you say, a lot of vitriol, especially by those politicians. I did key in on that because when you have a Governor Newsom or Governor Pritzker or all those crazy mayors that are impugning or saying bad things about my Border Patrol and my agents, we're going to have a problem. We're fixing to have us a problem immediately. So I did key in on some of those things, and one of the things I wanted to do was set the record straight as best as I could. We had a very strong social media platform, or several platforms: Instagram, Facebook, and X. And a lot of people said, "Wow, you've posted some really strong messages or videos or things like that." Well, we meant to do that. Betsy, we meant to do that. There's a reason for that, is when you have a Pritzker or a Newsom saying Border Patrol agents are Nazis or Gestapo or whatever they were saying, and they said everything. They said everything under the sun. It was amazing. It was breathtaking. But let's put the truth out there. Let's key in on that, and we'll push them back on their heels. So I think that one of the things that I wanted to do there in the face of all that was push them back on their heels. And the way to do that is, one, tell the truth, because a legal, ethical, and moral law enforcement mission is a truthful mission. And it's awfully hard to argue with the truth. There's two court decisions, the Supreme Court there in Los Angeles on consensual encounters, and then the Seventh Appellate Court victory on our use of force in Chicago. That really put them back on their heels, and I let them know it. But don't mess with our fellow police officers. And I know you probably felt the same way when you were in the police force. Don't mess with those folks out there putting it on the line every day, because then you idealize people like me, and I'm not the person you want to idealize, because I'm going to come really hard, and that's one of the reasons that I did come pretty hard there in social media.
How difficult was it to try, you're just trying to do your job, have your people do their jobs, and you've got not just the nutty protesters and things like that, but you literally have the media working against you. You have all the politicians you named and more working against you. And for a period of time there, especially during the Biden administration, you literally had your employer working against you with things like the CBP1 app and these parolees, as they call them, who only 70% of them were even doing the reporting they were supposed to. You know, did you and your people seem like an island there for quite a while?
Yes, in many ways that's correct. The two front war is never the war that you want to fight on two fronts. We want to fight the bad guys. All cops, all border patrol agents, we want to fight the bad guys, and that's what we should be fighting is the bad guys. But when you have to fight the good guys that are supposed to be, well, your support, it does make it a lot more difficult. That's where the leadership principles you were talking about come into play. I had a very strong staff in the El Centro sector, strongest border patrol staff that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So we'd worked together for many years because I actually stayed in El Centro as a chief patrol agent, generally a lot longer than most chiefs are able to stay, probably because of Biden. He didn't want me anywhere else, thought they would contain me there. So what that did is it allowed us to train that staff up. We were all on the same sheet of music. So when you have a very strong staff, and then that trickles down to those line agents, those border patrol agents working the line, when we're in close concert working together like that, whether it's on the border or in the middle of Minneapolis, we're on the same sheet of music. And that, coupled with the fact that it's always important for the leaders to take those heat rounds. We'll just call them heat rounds. If there's heat rounds coming from the good guys, the Biden administration, they relieve me of command at one point, or that crazy media in Chicago or Minneapolis. There's someone that needs to take those heat rounds and take them gladly for that workforce. So my staff and I, we tried to shed a lot of that heat so they could only have to worry about going out and doing that job, doing that immigration mission, whether it was on the border under the crazy Biden times, that catastrophe, the millions coming across, or in those cities. We learned a lot there on the border under Biden. We learned a lot, and all kudos to my staff because they learned a lot and they turned that right around, took it to the interior and applied those lessons that we had already learned over those past 4 years. So, yeah, two front wars are never optimal. Hey, we're still fighting a two front war, Betsy. I mean, look at some of the politicians now, the things they're saying. Look at what Chucky Schumer said here last week. I mean, he said, "Hey, the American public hates ICE and the Border Patrol," and then all of a sudden, the president somebody's trying to shoot the president. People listen to those words, and I think more than anything, the Border Patrol agents there in the cities were like, these politicians are causing this to happen. The Chucky Schumers are causing this to happen. And then even some of those politicians that remain silent, I call those rhinos. I didn't hear Tom Tillis or Representative McCall from Texas or that Joe Kennedy from Louisiana saying anything while we were fighting the two front war. But they came in on that backside and then had some rather distasteful things to say about Border Patrol and our operations. So two front wars, not a good scenario, but like any law enforcement anywhere, that whether it's Chicago PD, U.S. Border Patrol, we're going to complete the mission and we're not going to complain about it. We're just going to stand to and do it.
I think one of my biggest frustrations is this forced separation of local law enforcement, state law enforcement, county law enforcement, and our federal partners. When American law enforcement officers have worked so well for decades and decades with federal law enforcement in places like Chicago and Minneapolis. What was that like to see, especially, in a place like Minneapolis where those men and women have been so wildly vilified, and then you guys are there trying to help them, and yet they're basically separated from you.
Yeah, that's a travesty. What a travesty of our times. What a travesty against the U.S. taxpayer. The rank and file Border Patrol agents and the rank and file police officers and sheriff's deputies and law enforcement we've always gotten along, as you well know, Sergeant. We've always gotten along. We've always supported each other. We'll roll the cavalry for any law enforcement anytime. But one of the things I want the viewers to know, and all the police associations out there to know, is that they still had our backs. And I think if something really, really bad had happened, they would have had our backs. We had their backs. I can't count the amount of times that the rank and file would come up and say, hey, hey, we're sorry. We support what you're doing. You're helping the community. The crime is like plummeted in places like, well, everywhere we went, LA, Chicago, Charlotte, New Orleans, everything. So every time we talked to local law enforcement, oftentimes they would have to do that in the shadows. They would have to actually talk to us in the shadows for fear of those politicians, those city council members or county or commissioners or whoever these politicians were that would actually see them talking to us. But you know what? They made it a point to talk to us, and we made it a point to talk to them. A lot of challenge coins passed back and forth between local law enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol in those cities. So, like we said in those cities, Sarge, those are our brothers and sisters in blue, and we always have their back. They've got a tough job, almost a tougher job than us, because guess what? They're up against that same type of out of control activist politicians that, hey, it might be immigration one day, but you know what? They're on those cops the next day for something else. And they've got a inhumanly tough job in those blue cities. But we saw eye to eye, and Superintendent Schnelling there at Chicago PD, we talked a lot on the phone, and he was a cop's cop. Old Schnelling was a cop's cop.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, if you need something, we will roll the cavalry, and I'll just do it myself. I respected that a whole lot from Schnelling. He was a good guy.
Well, and you made at least 3,200 arrests there for Operation Midway Blitz, and but people listening to this are saying, most people voted for mass deportations. What is that going to take from a logistical point of view for the American public to see these mass deportations really take hold?
Yeah, mass deportations are the key. First and foremost, everyone has to realize that mass deportations are the key. If we keep scratching the surface, we'll never get there. With tens of millions, my number's 100 million illegal aliens here in the United States, in all cities, all regions, whether it's a rural environment or the city, they're everywhere. They fill our jails, schools, hospitals, take social services, cause rents to soar. They hurt our affordability, all sectors. So because they affect all sectors need to affect them. And I call that total spectrum immigration enforcement. Total spectrum, that is everything being brought to the forefront of enforcement. But not only enforcement, but there are many other areas that we can delve into that we haven't. And I've said this often, but the grassroots being Mom and Pa America, the grassroots being the million police officers nationwide. Could you imagine, Betsy, if we were able to bring all the 287G is the immigration statute that allows state and locals to enforce some immigration laws. Imagine all the 287Gs that we could bring into the fight nationwide in earnest with the police officers. Imagine Mom and Pa America actually calling a nice tip line that worked and treating that like a call for service, just like it would be a 911 call or a call for service in a city or wherever. Imagine that true whole of government approach, but it needs to be even more than that. Bringing in our grassroots is so very important, so vital to making that happen. So it's got to be everything all at one time. You may hear, hey, we're going to go after folks at the work site enforcement. Well, you know what? If you rely on any one tactic, then you're not seeing the larger picture here. It's all tactics. It's one giant war. Anything that we can bring legally, ethically, and morally into this fight, that's how we win it. And then those self-deportations, so vitally important. We started that in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New Orleans, especially New Orleans. And those self-deportations are key. So let's have them deport, so we're not putting handcuffs on 100 million people. That's a that's a lot of people to arrest. Let's have them do it themselves. Total spectrum immigration enforcement does that. It causes that mass deportation to happen. And there's so many different tactics and strategies that can be brought together at one time to do that. So we're going to have to do that. And it's called willpower. Do we have the willpower to do that? You know what? The 90% of Americans that I've talked to on the ground in places like Minneapolis, Chicago, talking to people like you, Betsy, we do have the willpower. It's just there seems to be a very vocal, small minority, whether that's extremists or activists, or even some of those politicians that don't have the willpower. But 90% want it. We need to start now because the time's getting late.
Thanks so much for tuning in to part 1 of our fascinating interview with Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino. Don't miss part 2. And in the meantime, if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, you can follow us on Facebook, follow us on X, follow us on LinkedIn, and of course, you can go to our website at nationalpolice.org.
Every day, the brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line to keep us safe. But they need our help to continue their mission. Activist politicians, progressive prosecutors, the ACLU, and the rest of the anti-police forces receive millions in donations from extremist pro-criminal elements like George Soros and woke corporations. The National Police Association is fighting them in courts around the country, including the United States Supreme Court, defending officers who are being attacked for doing their jobs. Additionally, the National Police Association works year-round to pass tough-on-crime legislation to put and keep criminals behind bars. Consider going to nationalpolice.org and donating to keep us in the fight. Together we can win. That is nationalpolice.org.